Today is the day we tackle a big project. We are going to be taking out the transmission of this to replace the rear main seal. How hard can it be? Obviously, we are under the car, we got it up, and this is how I know I have a bad rear main seal. You go up here into this viewing window right in front of my trans. You see the Wistek trans pan. Go watch that video if you see me putting that in. But oil is piling up here. Now, I already emptied the oil and the trans to take it to Blackstone and get oil analysis. So all this is dry. That's why you didn't see any oil coming out. But as you can see, it's been leaking for a while. I've never done this before, but it can't be that hard, right? We take out a few bolts here. We take out a few things here. Yeah, we'll figure it out. Let's get started. First step is to remove the exhaust. So mine, because I went with VRPs, are 14. So we're just gonna zip these off real quick. Go for it. So we took off the exhaust from where the primary caps were, back through the resonators, I didn't have any of those, to the back pipes. Next, we need to remove this shield, which is protecting the drive shaft. So we got to remove these side covers, and then there's 3 here. Just take it off. So undo these. These will come down. Undo these bolts holding these heat shields in, and then we're on to step 3. Well, we got the heat shields off. Super easy. Just a few of these nuts and stuff that just drops it down. Next, I'm going to remove this bar right here. And that is going to be an E12. So let's zip off both those, and then we can get to removing everything else. Right here is the transmission mount. This is a lot of times replaced on cars. I bought a new one. Right now, there's 3 13 millimeters holding it into this cross member, and then 2 bolts up here. So what I'm going to be doing is just taking out these 3, backing these 2 out. I'm going to see how much the transmission comes down. I may have to put a jack here to just support some weight, because I don't want all the weight being suspended by the bell housing while I remove the drive shaft. So I'm just going to unzip these and kind of assess the situation. These are 16 millimeter. I don't know if you guys all saw that, but the whole thing fell, which the transmission mount was doing its thing. I cannot get it out because it did pin it down. So what we're gonna have to do is put a jack under here to jack this up and to support all that pressure. Right now, this cross member is holding it up, but we need to relieve that pressure. We got these 4 bolts taken off right here, and you have a little shaft here that goes right there. So you just have to pry it back. Now it's going to go back here to this carrier. So I'm going to be taking these 2 off to get this front drive shaft out of the way. Not a big deal at all. So here's the back of the transmission and the trans pan. So as you can kind of get oriented here, we're getting close, but we just need this out of the way. So we're going to be removing this here to drop it down. And as you can see, this is the rear of the car. Where we're currently at is I took off my secondary. This is my O2 sensor hole, but it goes into my like V-band, I believe it is, for my air fuel ratio. These are my primaries. They're just hanging here. And here's the plug. And all I'm doing is I'm zip tying everything and labeling it as it comes off. And these are my drivers and passengers O2 from the primaries, the first ones. I took off the little bracket here. Here's the viewing window where you can see the torque converter and the where right there we're leaking oil. So we got to be careful of a few things like this. This is a ground wire here, right? So we just have to unbolt it there or from here, so that when we lower everything down, nothing is going to be pulled or pulled. Now, we also have our cooler lines. These also are going to have to be removed. Up here on the passenger side, you can see right there is where it connects. And it's a hard line. It goes up front, right? And here's the second one right here. Goes to the driver's side. So we're going to have to take these out so that when all this comes out with these bell housing bolts, we do not rip anything that's going to make our lives miserable trying to replace. The hard lines here are E10s. So I removed it from the transmission there, and we have the one here, just a simple E10. Bang those out so that we can then move these lines out of the way to make room for the whole thing to drop down. There's a bracket here that we had to remove. It's held on by this T30 right here that holds the O2 sensor like clips. So we removed that, which then frees this bracket up right here. And this bracket is covering up this connector right here. And this goes into the firewall by the passenger. So I'm just going to remove this to free up some more thing. I think this is some sort of, I don't know. It's a connector, electric. We're gonna take it out. You may be laughing, but I got a bell housing bolt out. This is great. Now, look at the ridiculous length of this extension. What has to happen is you have to feed it up the length of the transmission all the way back to get to those bolts. So mine's approximately 4.5 feet long here, and it works. You just got to keep track of everything and just kind of feed it up there. It does help with 2 people to be able to tell you when you're seated, but they are all broken loose. Next step is to back them all out. Get the transmission jack up here instead, kind of swap out this system for that so that we can then start backing this thing down. So far, so good. Now that all the bell housing bolts are loose, I swapped out the little floor jack over there for the Harbor Freight engine transmission jack, whatever you want to call it. This has been great. I used it on the Excursion. If you watch over here, I will have that video hopefully up. But what we have here now is wood supporting the Weiss Tech plant pan, and we have all the bolts back here, which I showed with my extremely long extension. And now it's just, let's start unbolting and loosening and making sure this does not fall down here. How hard can it be? Let's do it. All right, so what we're looking at here is this bolt also has a nut on the back. So we need to make sure that this goes back into the same hole. Now, obviously we would know because this isn't blind. They are both the same length, but this one has a bolt. So just keep track of all this. Like I always say in all my videos, label, label, label. These are all the bolts that came out. Now, what we do have to take note of is we have some short ones and we do have some long ones, and then we have some with 2 nuts on the back. There's a plate here. So I took myself a little cheat sheet. We have short, 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 long with the bracket, long, short with the bracket, short, short, bolt, bolt, and that's this plate, short. Now, this is gonna help me put this back together. There are 12 in total, 6 on one side, 6 on the other. Now, we just gotta start lowering this thing down and hopefully we don't damage anything, hurt ourselves, and back this thing out. The goal is to leave the torque converter on and just back this straight off. So, I don't know, trial and error. Let's get this thing done. Change of plans because we can't back the splines inside the trans from the torque converter in here, right there, okay? We can't back it up enough because the bell housing is hitting the foot tunnel, whatever you want to call it. So what we're doing is taking off the bolts from the torque converter. Next, what I'm gonna do is we can get to 4 of the 6, but over here, if you guys remember, we can turn over the motor with a 27 millimeter or 1 1/16 inch. All right, so I'm gonna slowly turn it over so that the next round of bolts will be underneath here, right here, so I can take those out, and then the torque converter will be slid back along with the transmission so we can lower this down because, well, honestly, we're stuck. So that is the game plan right now. Let's see how we can execute. I'm clear up top.
Hold on.
I'm clear. I'm clear.
I think everything's clear. Yes.
I'm going all the way down.
All the way down. I got this line out of the way.
All right, so the transmission is clearly out. We got it out, and the key was to remove the torque converter bolts. As you can see here, there's 2 here, 2 here, and 2 up there. And those were the splines I was telling you about. We couldn't get this back far enough to clear this from hitting the car. So it's actually not as bad as you would think. We just need to start looking at this. But next up is removing the flywheel so that we can get to the rear main seal that's sitting right there. As you can see, we got the plate and the bracket that I was telling you about. Those are the holes right there that go into it. One of the bolts I still had there. I figured it was going to be crazy to try to rethread that. And there's the top of where the trans go. So guys, not too bad. We did this in what I would consider 1 day of work. Definitely helps with 2 people, but this is the view we got. So it's out. Really wasn't too bad. It was a little messy. Not as heavy as you'd think. Definitely a 2-person job in my opinion. But as you can see, we just got to take off this flex flywheel, whatever you want to call it, to get to the rear main seal. But this is step 1, how to remove your transmission. I hope you guys enjoyed it because, man, this is my happy place and I love sharing it with you. So next video, we're going to be working on the rear main seal. And I got a surprise coming up in the next few days for you. So make sure you stay tuned, watch for the next content, and I'll catch you guys next time.